My name is Erica. I am 42 years old, and I raised my daughter Madison alone since I was 19. I sacrificed everything for her, from my college education to working multiple jobs, just so she could have a good life. We had such a beautiful relationship until she met Kyle and got engaged. Then suddenly, my world collapsed when she told me I wasn't invited to her wedding because I wasn't supportive enough. While I share how my world collapsed that day, let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you sacrificed everything for, subscribe to know what happened next. I still remember the exact moment I found out I was pregnant with Madison. I was sitting on the edge of my dorm room bed, staring at that little plastic stick with 2 pink lines. I was only 19, just finishing my freshman year at the state university. I had such big dreams then, planning to major in business and maybe open my own company someday. When I told my boyfriend Jake about the pregnancy, his face went completely blank. We had only been dating for 6 months, and I guess a baby wasn't part of his 5-year plan. "I am not ready to be a father," he said. 2 days later, he stopped answering my calls. 3 days after that, I saw him around campus with another girl. Just like that, I was alone. Telling my parents was even worse. My father slammed his fist on the kitchen table. "We did not raise you to throw your life away like this," he shouted. My mother just cried silently, shaking her head. "They gave me an ultimatum: either terminate the pregnancy or move out and forget about their financial support for college." I packed my bags that night. For several days, I slept on my friend Amanda's couch, trying to figure out what to do. I kept putting my hand on my stomach, thinking about the little life growing inside me. Despite everything, despite being so scared and alone, I knew I wanted to keep my baby. I dropped out of college that week. Finding affordable housing was my first challenge. I eventually found a tiny studio apartment with peeling wallpaper and questionable plumbing, but it was all I could afford. The first few months were a blur of job applications and doctor appointments. I found work as a waitress at a local diner and took on evening shifts at a convenience store. Between the 2 jobs, I barely had time to sleep, but I needed every penny. My neighbor, Mrs. Patel, was a godsend. She was an older Indian woman who lived across the hall and offered to watch my baby when I worked nights. "I raised 4 children," she told me with a warm smile. "One more is nothing." I do not know how I would have managed without her kindness. When Madison was born, she had these big blue eyes that seemed to take in everything. I remember holding her in that hospital room, completely exhausted from 20 hours of labor, but feeling such fierce love and determination. "It is just you and me, baby girl," I whispered to her. "But I promise I will give you everything you need." Those first years were the hardest. There were nights I would sit on my bathroom floor and cry silently after Madison finally fell asleep. My feet would ache from double shifts, and the constant worry about money never went away. Could I afford diapers this week? What about when she outgrew her clothes? How would I pay for daycare when Mrs. Patel moved away? I became an expert at stretching $1. I learned to cook nutritious meals on a tight budget. I became friends with thrift store owners who would set aside good children's clothes when they came in. I fixed our broken appliances by watching tutorials online, since calling a repairman was out of the question. Despite the hardships, Madison and I developed an incredible bond. We had our little rituals and inside jokes. Sunday mornings were pancake days, no matter how tired I was. We would make them together, with Madison standing on a chair beside me at the stove as she got older, giggling as she tried to flip them. On my rare days off, we would go to the public library or the park, making adventures out of free activities. Dating was out of the question. A few men asked me out over the years, but I always declined. I simply did not have the time or energy to invest in a relationship. Madison was my priority, and every spare moment belonged to her. Some nights after a particularly exhausting day, she would crawl into my bed and wrap her little arms around me. "I love you to the moon and back, Mommy," she would say, and all the hardship seemed worth it. As Madison grew, I realized I needed to advance my career if I wanted to provide her with more opportunities. I started taking online courses in bookkeeping and financial management while she slept. It meant functioning on even less sleep, but I was determined. I applied for a position as a retail sales associate at a women's clothing store, which paid slightly better than the diner. Within a year, I was promoted to assistant manager. I continued taking classes at night, earning certifications that helped me move up. By the time Madison was in middle school, I had secured a position as a financial administrator at a small local company. The regular hours and better pay made a world of difference. For the first time, I could afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Madison finally had her own room, decorated with the purple paint she had been begging for. The biggest change was being able to start a college fund for Madison. Every month, I put away whatever I could, sometimes just $20, other times more. I wanted her to have the education I never finished. I wanted her to chase her dreams without the struggles I had faced. "You will go to college, and you will not have to work while studying," I promised her. "You will focus on your education and enjoy the experience." Madison would nod solemnly, already a serious student even in elementary school. She had inherited my determination that was clear from an early age. Through all those years, through every hardship and sacrifice, I never regretted my decision to have Madison. She was my world, my reason for pushing forward every day. Every milestone she reached was a victory we shared together. Every report card, every school performance, every birthday celebrated with homemade cake and modest gifts wrapped in Sunday comics because real wrapping paper was an unnecessary expense. I thought our bond was unbreakable. I thought she understood the depths of my love and sacrifice. I was so proud of the young woman she was becoming. But I had no idea how quickly things would change once she left for college, or how painful that change would be for both of us. Madison graduated high school as valedictorian, and I burst with pride watching her give her speech. All those late nights helping with homework, all those sacrifices had paid off. When the acceptance letter from Westfield University came with a partial scholarship, I cried happy tears. It was not a full ride, but combined with the college fund I had built and some additional student loans, we could make it work. "I will make you proud, Mom," Madison promised as we packed up her dorm essentials. I had taken on extra shifts to afford new bedding and a laptop for her studies. She had chosen to major in public relations, already envisioning herself working for a big company in the city. "You already make me proud every single day," I told her, hugging her tight before saying goodbye. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, driving away and leaving my baby on that campus. But it was also exactly what I had worked so hard for all those years. The first semester went well. Madison called regularly, telling me about her classes and new friends. When she came home for Thanksgiving, she seemed the same sweet girl who had left. But when she returned for winter break after completing her first full semester, I noticed subtle changes. Madison brought home a new wardrobe I had never seen before. Designer labels I could never afford peeked out from her luggage. When I asked about them, she vaguely mentioned sales and quickly changed the subject. She spent more time on her phone than talking to me, and when her high school friends invited her over, she made excuses not to go. "They are so immature now," she explained, scrolling through Instagram. "College changes your perspective." By sophomore year, Madison rarely came home on weekends. Her calls became shorter and less frequent. When she did visit, she made comments about our apartment that never bothered her before. "This place is so small," she remarked once, looking around our living room with a slight grimace. "And this neighborhood is really going downhill." I tried not to take it personally. She was experiencing a different world at university, making friends from wealthy backgrounds. It was natural for her perspective to shift. Still, her comments stung. During her junior year, Madison landed an internship with a PR firm in the city and decided to stay on campus during summer break to be closer to work. When I drove up to take her to dinner, she suggested meeting at a restaurant near campus instead of showing me her summer housing. "It is just easier this way," she said when I asked why. "Parking is a nightmare near my building." Throughout dinner, Madison talked enthusiastically about her internship and her new friend group. All her stories featured people with seemingly unlimited resources, weekend trips to beach houses, expensive dinners, shopping sprees. When she mentioned her friend Tiffany's family had a private jet, I noticed Madison avoided making eye contact with me. "Your roommate Alicia still at school for the summer?" I asked, remembering her freshman roommate who came from a similar background to ours. "Oh, we don't really talk anymore," Madison said dismissively. "We just grew apart." Later, when I mentioned my recent promotion at work, Madison nodded politely, but quickly changed the subject. It dawned on me that she was embarrassed about my job, about our life. The realization felt like a physical blow. After graduation, Madison was offered a position at Blair Communications, a prestigious PR firm in the city. I attended her graduation ceremony alone, sitting among families who arrived in luxury cars and talked about vacation homes. Madison introduced me briefly to a few of her friends, but quickly moved on as if worried I might say something that would reveal her background. With her first real paycheck, Madison rented an apartment in an upscale area of the city. When I visited for the first time, bringing a houseplant as a housewarming gift, I felt immediately out of place. The doorman gave me a suspicious look as I entered the lobby in my department store clothes. The apartment was small, but modern, with high ceilings and a view of the city skyline. "This must cost a fortune," I said, looking around at the sleek furniture I did not recognize. "It is worth it for the location and amenities," Madison replied, taking the plant from me and placing it somewhat reluctantly on a side table. I later noticed it had been moved to a less visible spot in the kitchen. Our phone calls became even less frequent. Madison always seemed busy with work events or social engagements. When we did talk, she shared less and less about her life. I tried to remain supportive, telling myself this was normal for young adults, establishing their independence. Then came the dinner where Madison introduced me to Kyle. She had mentioned dating someone new, but had been vague about details. We met at an exclusive restaurant where the menu had no prices, always a worrying sign. Kyle was tall and conventionally handsome, with the confident demeanor of someone who had never worried about money a day in his life. "It is so nice to finally meet you," I said warmly, extending my hand. Kyle shook it with a slightly limp grip, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Likewise," he said in a tone that suggested the opposite. Throughout dinner, Kyle dominated the conversation, talking about his family's construction business, their homes in the Hamptons and Aspen, his Ivy League education. When he asked about me, it felt more like an interrogation than genuine interest. "And what exactly do you do, Erica?" he asked, emphasizing my first name in a way that felt deliberately disrespectful. "I am a financial administrator for Meridian Services," I answered. "That is like an accountant?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Similar, yes," I replied, feeling Madison tense beside me. "My mother used to volunteer with an organization that helps women get back into the workforce," Kyle said, as if offering a helpful suggestion. "They specialize in mature women looking to build careers later in life." I forced a smile, acutely aware of Madison's discomfort. When I glanced at her, the look in her eyes was unmistakable. She was ashamed of me. My accomplished, beautiful daughter, whom I had given everything for, was ashamed of her own mother. As I drove home that night, tears blurred my vision. Something fundamental had shifted, and I wasn't sure our relationship would ever be the same again. Madison called me on a Tuesday evening 3 months after that uncomfortable dinner to announce her engagement. Her voice bubbled with excitement as she described how Kyle had proposed during a weekend trip to Napa Valley. "He had the whole vineyard to ourselves, Mom. There were rose petals everywhere and a string quartet playing our song. The ring is incredible, 3 carats cushion cut." I swallowed hard, trying to match her enthusiasm. "That sounds beautiful, sweetheart. I am so happy for you. When can we get together to celebrate? I would love to take you both to dinner." There was a slight pause. "Oh, well, we are actually having an engagement party this weekend at Kyle's parents' lake house. It is mostly for close friends, very intimate." "I see," I said, the implication clear. I was not invited. "Well, maybe the 3 of us could get together next week." "Sure, maybe. Things are just so busy with work and now wedding planning. Kyle's mom knows all the best vendors in the city, so we have been meeting with them nonstop." Despite the hurt, I went shopping that weekend for an engagement gift. I could not afford anything close to the luxury items I knew would be at her engagement party. But I found a beautiful silver photo frame and had it engraved with their names and the engagement date. I added a heartfelt card and sent the package to her apartment. A week later, I had to call Madison to confirm she had received it. "Oh, yes, thanks for that," she said distractedly. "It is not really our style, but it was a nice thought." I bit my lip to keep from responding. The frame had cost me nearly a week's worth of groceries. When I finally met Kyle's parents at a casual dinner at their country club, the dynamic became even clearer. Mrs. Winters, impeccably dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent, looked me up and down, as if assessing a slightly suspicious package. "Madison tells us you raised her as a single mother," she said, making the statement sound like an admission of guilt. "That must have been challenging." "It had its moments," I replied evenly. "But Madison was worth every sacrifice." "Yes, well, she certainly overcame her humble beginnings," Mrs. Winters continued, glancing at her husband. "We were quite surprised when Kyle told us about her background. She fits in so well with their social circle you would never know." Mr. Winters barely acknowledged me throughout the meal, directing most of his questions to Madison about her job and connections to important clients. When the topic of the wedding came up, it became apparent that the Winters had taken complete control of the planning. "We have secured the Langham for the reception," Mrs. Winters announced. "The waiting list is usually 2 years, but the event coordinator is an old family friend." Madison nodded enthusiastically. "The ballroom is stunning. We are thinking of a winter wonderland theme with imported white orchids and crystal centerpieces. Have you thought about incorporating any of your family traditions?" I asked Madison gently. Before she could answer, Mrs. Winters interjected. "Oh, we have the wedding planning well in hand. The Winters family has certain traditions that must be observed. The grandeur of the occasion must reflect the family's standing." On the drive home, I tentatively brought up my concerns. "Madison, it seems like Kyle's family is making most of the decisions about your wedding." "They know what they are doing, Mom," she replied defensively, "and they are paying for most of it." "I want to contribute too," I said. "I have been saving for your wedding since you were little." This was not entirely true, but I had put aside a modest sum over the past few years. Madison's laugh held a note of derision that pierced my heart. "That is sweet, Mom. But do you have any idea how much this wedding costs? The flowers alone are more than you could probably contribute." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "It is not about the amount. I want to be part of your special day." "The best way you can help is by just going along with what is planned," she said. "This wedding is really important for Kyle's family connections and my future in the city." A few days later, I emailed Madison suggestions for possible venues that held sentimental value for us, like the botanical garden where we used to visit on Sunday afternoons when she was little. Her response was quick and cutting. "Mom, please stop. The venues you are suggesting are completely inappropriate for the scale of wedding we are planning. This is not some small family gathering. Important people will be attending. As the wedding planning progressed, I was systematically excluded from every decision. I was not invited to dress fittings menu tastings or floral consultations. When I asked Madison about these exclusions, her excuses became increasingly transparent. The bridal salon only allows 3 people maximum, she claimed, though her Instagram later showed 5 of her friends there. Tensions escalated when I overheard Madison on the phone with one of Kyle's friends during a rare visit to her apartment. "No, my family is not really in the picture," she said, unaware I was returning from the bathroom. "It is complicated. I was practically raised by family friends after my parents. Well, it is a sad story. The Winters have been so wonderful taking me in like their own daughter." I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding. When Madison saw me, her face drained of color. She quickly ended the call. "How could you say such a thing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "After everything we have been through together?" "You do not understand the pressure I am under," Madison snapped, immediately defensive. "Kyle's friends come from important families. Their backgrounds matter. And your real background, our life together, that does not matter," I asked, tears welling in my eyes. "That is not what I meant," she said, but her eyes slid away from mine. "I just need to fit in with their world now. It is complicated." I left her apartment that day, feeling like I had lost my daughter long before the wedding even took place. The child I had raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for was vanishing before my eyes, replaced by someone I barely recognized. The day that completely shattered my heart began innocently enough. Madison texted me asking to meet for lunch at La Maison, an upscale French restaurant downtown. I thought perhaps she had reconsidered her recent behavior and wanted to reconnect. I spent extra time getting ready, putting on my nicest dress and the pearl earrings I saved for special occasions. When I arrived at the restaurant, I was surprised to see Madison already seated at a table with Mrs. Winters. They were huddled together, speaking intently, and did not notice me approach. "Madison," I said, startling them both. "Mom, you are right on time." Madison said, her voice oddly formal. "Please sit down." Mrs. Winters gave me a cold nod, but did not speak. A waiter appeared immediately to pour water and hand me a menu. I noticed Madison and Mrs. Winters already had glasses of champagne. "Is there something to celebrate?" I asked, trying to maintain a positive tone despite the palpable tension. "Actually, we need to discuss something important about the wedding," Madison said, straightening the silverware in front of her unnecessarily. "I am all ears," I replied, smiling encouragingly. "I have been hoping we could talk more about your plans." Madison and Mrs. Winters exchanged a look that sent a chill down my spine. "The thing is, Mom," Madison began, not quite meeting my eyes. "We have had to make some difficult decisions about the guest list." My stomach tightened. "I understand. Big weddings can get complicated with seating arrangements and such." "It is more than that," Madison continued, her voice hardening. "After careful consideration, we think it would be best if you did not attend the wedding." The world seemed to stop. I stared at Madison, certain I had misheard. "What did you say?" Mrs. Winters interjected smoothly. "What Madison is trying to say is that the wedding has taken on significant importance for both families. The governor will be attending, as well as several state representatives and business leaders. The atmosphere needs to be consistent with the social standing of the attendees." I looked from her to Madison, who was now staring at her champagne glass. "Are you saying I am not good enough to attend my own daughter's wedding?" "Mom, do not make this more difficult," Madison said sharply. "You have not been supportive of my relationship with Kyle or my new life. You criticize everything about the wedding planning. When have I ever criticized your plans? I asked, genuinely confused. I have been trying to be included in them. Your constant suggestions about meaningful locations and simpler options undermine what we are trying to achieve, Madison said. This wedding is about my future, about cementing my place in Kyle's world. And I do not fit into that world, I finished for her, my voice hollow. It is not personal, Mrs. Winters said, though nothing could have been more personal. Madison is joining a family with certain social obligations. The wedding sets the tone for their future. I sat there numb with shock as memories flooded my mind. Madison's first steps staying up all night with her when she had the flu, working double shifts to buy her first prom dress, the pride in her eyes when she got her college acceptance letter. How had we come to this moment? Madison, look at me, I said quietly. My daughter reluctantly raised her eyes to meet mine. I have supported you your entire life. I gave up everything for you. My education, my youth, any chance at an easier life. I did it all willingly because I love you more than anything in this world. I know, Mom, she said, her voice wavering slightly. But this is different. This is about my future. A future that would not exist if I had not sacrificed everything for your past, I replied. Mrs. Winters cleared her throat impatiently. Perhaps we could focus on practical matters. Madison and I have been discussing how to handle questions about her family at the wedding. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? Madison shifted uncomfortably. We thought it might be simpler to say I was raised by family friends after losing my parents young. The Andersons have agreed to stand in as my honorary family for the ceremony. The Andersons. I recognized the name as friends of the Winters family. They were going to replace me, erase me from my daughter's life story. I felt something break inside me, a fundamental severing of what I thought was an unbreakable bond. The pain was physical, radiating through my chest. I see, I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil inside. You are not just uninviting me from the wedding. You are pretending I never existed. Do not be so dramatic, Madison said, but I could see guilt flash across her face. It is just for the wedding day. Just for appearances, Mrs. Winters added smoothly. In certain circles, backgrounds matter. Madison deserves every advantage in her new life. I stood up slowly, gathering my purse. Madison, I have never been more disappointed in anyone in my entire life. Not when your father abandoned us. Not when my parents turned their backs on me. Never. Mom, please, Madison began, but I held up my hand. I gave you everything I had to give, not just material things, but every piece of my heart. And this is how you repay that love. Mrs. Winters scoffed. This emotional display is precisely why. I was not talking to you, I interrupted, surprising even myself with my boldness. Turning back to Madison, I said, when you decided I wasn't good enough for your wedding, you made a choice that cannot be undone. Remember that. I walked out of the restaurant with my head held high, though my legs felt like they might give way beneath me. I made it to my car before the first sob escaped, gripping the steering wheel as my body shook with grief. Driving home, I passed places filled with memories of Madison's childhood. The ice cream shop, where we celebrated her making the honor roll, the park, where I taught her to ride a bike, the library, where we spent countless Saturday afternoons. Each landmark was a reminder of the life we had shared, the bond I thought was unbreakable. At home, I sat in silence, trying to process what had happened. I picked up a framed photo of Madison at her high school graduation, both of us smiling widely, my arm around her shoulders. We looked so happy, so connected. Where had that Madison gone? I called my friend Janet, the only person who had been there through my entire journey as a single mother. Her outrage on my behalf was validating. "She cannot be serious," Janet fumed after I recounted the lunch. "After everything you did for her, working yourself to the bone to give her opportunities. Apparently, I am an embarrassment now." I said the words, still painful to speak aloud. "What are you going to do?" Janet asked. I looked around my modest apartment at the life I had built while giving Madison every possible advantage. The college fund I scrimped and saved for. The joint credit card I had added her to years ago to help build her credit. The savings account I had started for her wedding long before she met Kyle. A calm clarity descended on me. I am going to show her that actions have consequences. After ending the call with Janet, I sat at my computer and began systematically freezing every financial connection between Madison and myself. I called the bank and froze the joint checking account we had maintained since her college days. I called the credit card company and reported my card as lost, ensuring that the secondary card Madison occasionally used would be deactivated. I changed the password on the wedding savings account I had accumulated over the years. Each action felt like both a betrayal and a reclamation. I was severing financial ties with my daughter, something I had never imagined doing. But I was also standing up for myself, refusing to be used and discarded. When I finished, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, wondering if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. But underneath the doubt was a steely certainty I deserved better than to be erased from my own daughter's life. I barely slept that night after freezing the accounts. My mind kept replaying Madison's words, the cold calculation in her voice, as she explained why her own mother could not attend her wedding. By morning, I felt hollowed out as if grief had scraped me empty from the inside. I called in sick to work for the first time in years, unable to face conversation or normalcy. Around noon, I received a confirmation email from the bank verifying the accounts had been frozen and password changes completed. Seeing it in writing made everything more real, more final. The first call from Madison came at 2:17 p.m. I watched my phone vibrate across the coffee table, her smiling high school graduation photo lighting up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call came 5 minutes later, and another. By the sixth call, I finally picked up. "What did you do?" Madison demanded, her voice shrill with panic. "Hello to you too," I replied, surprised by my own calm. "My card was declined when I tried to pay the deposit for the ice sculpture. The wedding planner was right there, Mom. It was humiliating." "That must have been uncomfortable," I said. "Almost as uncomfortable as being told you are not welcome at your only child's wedding, or finding out she is pretending you do not exist." "This is not funny," Madison snapped. "I need you to unfreeze the accounts right now. We have vendors waiting for payments." "I am sure Kyle's family can cover those expenses," I said. "After all, they are hosting this important social event that I am not good enough to attend. Is that what this is about? You are punishing me because your feelings are hurt." Her dismissive characterization of my devastation as merely hurt feelings ignited something inside me. "No, Madison. This is about consequences. You have made it clear I am no longer your family, so it follows that you no longer have access to family resources." "You cannot do this," she shouted. "Some of those accounts are mine." "Actually, they are not. Your name is on them because I put it there, just like I put you through college, bought your first car, and supported you in every possible way. Check the paperwork." The line went quiet for a moment. "I never thought you would be so petty," she finally said, her voice cold. Kyle was right about you. The comment stung, but I held firm. What exactly was Kyle right about? That you would never understand our world. That you would try to hold me back out of jealousy. I laughed, though there was no humor in it. Jealousy, Madison. I worked my entire adult life to give you opportunities I never had. Everything I did was to push you forward, not hold you back. The difference is, I thought I was raising a daughter who understood the value of family honesty and gratitude. If you do not fix this right now, we are done, Madison threatened. I mean it. I will never speak to you again. You were already planning to erase me from your life, I replied softly. At least now it is on my terms, too. She hung up without another word. Within an hour, Kyle called. His voice was condescending from the first word. Erica, this little tantrum needs to end immediately. Madison is extremely upset, and we have important financial commitments for the wedding. Hello, Kyle, I said. I am not having a tantrum. I am simply aligning my financial support with my role in Madison's life. Since I apparently have no place in her future, my money doesn't either. This is incredibly childish, he said. We could involve lawyers, you know. Feel free, I replied. I would be interested to hear a legal argument for why I am obligated to fund a wedding I am barred from attending. He made a frustrated sound. Look, maybe we can work something out. The guest list is not completely finalized. So now I might be good enough to attend as long as I pay for the privilege. No, thank you. After Kyle's call came one from Mrs. Winters. I let that go to voicemail, not trusting myself to remain civil. Her message was predictably condescending, suggesting I was sabotaging Madison's happiness out of a misguided sense of entitlement. She ended by saying she had expected more maturity from someone of my age. I deleted the message halfway through. Over the next few days, the pressure intensified. Madison alternated between angry texts and tearful voicemails. A few mutual friends called, clearly having heard only Madison's side of the story, gently suggesting I should reconsider for the sake of keeping the peace. I explained the full situation to them, and most fell into embarrassed silence. Meanwhile, Madison's social media told a very different story than the panicked calls and texts I was receiving. Her Instagram showed her at cake tastings and floral design appointments, smiling broadly with Kyle's mother and bridesmaids. One post read, "Wedding planning in full swing, so blessed to have amazing people supporting me through this magical time. # blessed, # perfect wedding, # winter wonderland." The disconnect between her public persona and private panic was jarring. It seemed the image of the perfect wedding was more important than the reality behind it. A week after freezing the accounts, I received a text from a number I did not recognize. This is Kyle's father. Madison is in tears daily because of your actions. My son deserves a stress-free bride. Name your price to end this nonsense. Everyone has a number. I was so stunned by the crude attempt at a bribe that I laughed out loud in my empty apartment. I did not dignify it with a response. The day before the wedding was supposed to take place, my doorbell rang at 11:30 p.m. Through the peephole, I saw Madison standing in the hallway, her mascara streaked down her face, hair disheveled. For a moment, I hesitated, my hand on the lock. Then I opened the door. Madison looked up at me, her face crumpling. Everything is falling apart, she sobbed. I stepped aside to let her in, instinct overriding my hurt. She stumbled into the apartment and collapsed onto the couch, crying harder than I had seen since she was a little girl. The flowers canceled yesterday. The venue is threatening to give away our date because the final payment is late. The caterer wants cash up front now because they heard about the other vendors. I sat across from her, hands folded in my lap to keep from reaching out to comfort her, as I would have done automatically before. Where is Kyle? His family? I asked. Madison wiped her eyes, leaving smears of makeup on her cheeks. They are furious with me. I did not tell them about the financial issues until vendors started calling them directly. Kyle said I deliberately misled him about my financial situation. Did you? I asked quietly. She looked down at her hands. I let him believe I had more savings than I actually do. He thought my job paid more. I did not correct him. And the winters are not covering the costs. Madison laughed bitterly. They said they have already contributed their agreed portion. They expect Kyle and me to handle our share, which was supposed to come from my family and our savings. Kyle said if I cannot even manage wedding finances honestly, how can he trust me with anything? I let the silence stretch between us, waiting. Mom, she finally said, her voice small. I told Kyle the truth tonight, about everything, about lying to his friends about my background, about uninviting you. How did he take it? Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. He said he needed time to think, that he does not know who I really am anymore. His mom suggested postponing the wedding. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the maternal instinct to immediately fix everything. Madison, why are you here? She looked up, surprise flashing across her tear-stained face. I need your help. I need the accounts unfrozen. Is that all? Her lower lip trembled. No, I need my mom. I have made terrible mistakes. I was so desperate to fit in with Kyle's world that I lost sight of who I am and where I come from. She reached for my hand. I am so sorry, Mom. I cannot believe I was willing to cut you out of my wedding, out of my life. I studied her face, trying to determine if this was genuine remorse or merely a financial emergency forcing her hand. Why should I believe you now? How do I know this is not just about the money? Madison winced at the question. I deserve that. I have been horrible to you. She took a shaky breath. Do you remember when I was 14 and desperately wanted those expensive jeans everyone was wearing? And you worked double shifts for 2 weeks straight to buy them for my birthday? I nodded, confused by the sudden topic change. I found the receipt once accidentally. I saw how much they cost and realized it was probably our entire food budget for the month. But you never complained, never made me feel bad about wanting them. Her voice broke. That is who you are, Mom. Endlessly giving. And this is how I repaid you. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, bringing up a text conversation with Kyle. Read this, please. I took the phone hesitantly. The messages showed Madison defending me to Kyle, refusing his suggestion that she just apologize to get the accounts unfrozen. The final message from her read, I need to make this right not because of the money, but because she deserves better. She's my mom, and I love her. If you can't understand that, maybe we shouldn't get married at all. When I looked up, Madison was watching me anxiously. I meant every word, she said. If fixing our relationship means calling off the wedding, I will do it. For the first time since that awful lunch, I felt a small crack in the wall of hurt I had built around myself. I do not want you to cancel your wedding, I said slowly. But I need to know that you truly understand what you did. Madison nodded earnestly. I got caught up in a world that isn't real, Mom. Kyle's family, their friends, that whole scene, it is all about appearances. There is no substance there. You taught me about real love, real sacrifice, and I threw it away for what? For ice sculptures and governor's handshakes. She moved to sit beside me, taking my hands in hers. Can you ever forgive me? I know I do not deserve it. I felt tears well in my own eyes. Madison, I have loved you every single day of your life, even the days when you made it very difficult. That never stopped, not even when you broke my heart. What can I do to make this right? She asked, squeezing my hands. I took a deep breath. First, you need to be completely honest with Kyle and his family. No more pretending. I already told Kyle everything, she said. But yes, I need to talk to his parents too. Second, I will be at your wedding as your mother. Not hidden away, not minimized. If they cannot accept that, then they do not accept you. Madison nodded vigorously. Absolutely. I want you there more than anyone. And third, I said, my voice softening, I need you to remember who you are. Not who the Winters want you to be, or who Kyle's friends would approve of. The real Madison who grew up in this apartment, who knows the value of hard work and honesty. For the first time that night, Madison smiled through her tears. I would like to get to know her again too. We talked until sunrise, really talked in a way we hadn't in years. Madison revealed how insecure she had felt at college among wealthy peers, how she had created increasingly elaborate stories about her background to fit in, how meeting Kyle had seemed like a fairy tale at first, but had gradually turned into a performance she could never stop. I was always afraid they would discover I was not good enough, she admitted. So I kept pushing you away because you reminded me of where I came from. Where you come from is nothing to be ashamed of, I told her firmly. We might not have had much, but we had integrity, love, and each other. That is worth more than any bank account or social connection. As dawn broke, we reached an understanding. I would unfreeze the accounts, but the wedding would be significantly scaled back. More importantly, Madison would stand up to the Winters and insist on my proper place in the ceremony and in her life. I cannot promise they will accept it gracefully, she warned. I do not need their grace, I replied. Just your honesty. The confrontation with the Winters was every bit as difficult as Madison had predicted. We agreed to meet at their home, a sprawling mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. As we pulled up to the massive iron gates, I felt a momentary doubt. This world was so far removed from our life together. You okay, Mom? Madison asked, noting my hesitation. Just taking it all in, I replied, straightening my shoulders. Let's do this. The Winters were waiting in their formal living room, a cold, pristine space that looked more like a museum than a home. Kyle sat apart from his parents, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Winters did not stand when we entered, while Mr. Winters merely nodded curtly from behind his imposing desk. I hope this meeting is to inform us that the financial situation has been resolved, Mrs. Winters said by way of greeting. Madison squeezed my hand before stepping forward. Yes and no. Mom and I have reached an understanding, but there are going to be changes to the wedding plans. What kind of changes? Kyle asked, speaking for the first time. Madison took a deep breath. First, my mother will be attending the wedding as my mother, not hidden away or minimized. She will be walking me down the aisle as she is the only parent who has been there for me my entire life. Mrs. Winters made a dismissive gesture. That is not possible. The Andersons have already agreed to their role. The programs have been printed. Then they will need to be reprinted, Madison said firmly. Second, we need to scale back the wedding considerably. The venue and many of the extravagant details are beyond our means. This is ridiculous, Mr. Winters finally spoke. We are not having this conversation. The arrangements have been made. The arrangements were made under false pretenses, I interjected calmly. Madison felt pressured to maintain appearances at any cost, which is not a healthy way to start a marriage. Mrs. Winters looked at me as if I had crawled out from under a rock. You have no say in these matters. This wedding is about our son and his future. It is about Madison's future too, I replied. And unlike you, I have been there for every moment of her past. Kyle stood suddenly, walking over to Madison. Is this really what you want? To throw away all our plans for a simpler wedding? Madison met his gaze steadily. What I want is to marry you without pretending to be someone I am not. I am not ashamed of my mom or where I come from anymore. If you want to marry me, you accept all of me, including my real family. The room fell silent as Kyle processed her words. Then, to everyone's surprise, he turned to his parents. Madison is right. This wedding has become more about your social aspirations than our happiness. If she wants her mother there in a place of honor, that is how it should be. Mrs. Winters gasped. Kyle, think about what you are saying. The governor has confirmed his attendance. The Blackwells are flying in from Europe. I do not care, Kyle said, and I saw a glimpse of the man Madison must have fallen in love with. If they are truly our friends, they will understand a change of plans. Mr. Winters slammed his hand on the desk. We have invested thousands in this wedding already. And we appreciate that, Madison said quickly. But we need to be realistic about what we can contribute. I would rather have a meaningful ceremony than a financial disaster. What followed was 2 hours of intense negotiation. The Winters were initially resistant to any changes, but when Kyle stood firm alongside Madison, they gradually relented. The wedding would be moved to a smaller venue. The guest list would be cut by half. Many of the more extravagant elements would be eliminated. Most importantly, I would be acknowledged as Madison's mother and given my rightful place in the ceremony. The Winters were not happy, but they recognized they were outnumbered, especially with their son taking our side. As we were leaving, Mrs. Winters pulled me aside. I still do not understand why Madison would choose to highlight her disadvantaged background. I smiled at her, genuinely pitying her limited perspective. Because authentic relationships are built on truth, not appearances. Madison understands that now. The weeks leading up to the revised wedding date were busy but healing. Madison and I worked together to plan a more modest but meaningful celebration. We found a beautiful garden venue that cost a fraction of the original ballroom. Madison chose simpler flowers and decor that still reflected her taste, but without the astronomical price tag. Most touchingly, she asked if we could incorporate some of our family traditions into the ceremony. We decided to use the quilt my grandmother had made as a table covering for the signing table. A small but significant nod to our family history. Kyle, to his credit, became more supportive once freed from his parents' expectations. He confessed to Madison that he had always found the elaborate plans somewhat overwhelming, but had gone along with them to please his family. The more genuine version of their relationship that emerged was stronger for having weathered this crisis. The Winters gradually adjusted to the new reality, though Mrs. Winters occasionally made passive-aggressive comments about the scaled-back nature of the event. Mr. Winters surprisingly seemed almost relieved when some of his business associates were cut from the guest list. On the morning of the wedding, I helped Madison get ready in a suite at the garden venue. As I zipped up her dress, a simpler but no less beautiful gown than the original, our eyes met in the mirror. "Thank you, Mom," she said softly. "Not just for today, but for everything, for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on us. I will always be here for you," I promised, blinking back tears. "No matter what." When the music began and we prepared to walk down the aisle together, Madison squeezed my arm. "I am so proud to have you as my mother," she whispered. My heart swelled as we began our walk. The assembled guests, a mix of Kyle's family, Madison's friends, and even a few of my longtime friends, watched as I proudly escorted my daughter toward her future husband. The Winters sat in the front row, Mrs. Winters notably stiff, but Mr. Winters offering a surprising nod of acknowledgement as we passed. During the reception, Madison insisted I give a toast. Standing before the gathered guests, I spoke from the heart about watching Madison grow from a tiny baby into the remarkable woman before them. I spoke of challenges overcome and the unbreakable bond of family. When I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room, including, surprisingly, Mr. Winters. Later, as Madison and Kyle prepared to leave for their honeymoon, she pulled me into a tight embrace. "This is just the beginning, Mom. Things will be different from now on, I promise." 6 months later, she called with news that made that promise feel real. "Mom, I am pregnant. You are going to be a grandmother." The joy in her voice was matched by my own heart racing with excitement. "That is wonderful news, sweetheart. We want you to be a big part of the baby's life," she continued earnestly. "Weekly visits, Sunday dinners, the whole thing. This child is going to know exactly where they come from and the amazing grandmother who made it all possible." As I hung up the phone, I reflected on the journey we had taken. The hurt had been real and deep, but healing had been possible because love, real love, can withstand even the most painful betrayals. Madison had lost her way, temporarily seduced by a world of appearances and status, but had found her way back to what truly matters: authenticity, honesty, and family. I learned that sometimes you have to stand firm in your own worth, even when it means causing short-term pain. By refusing to let Madison erase me from her life, I forced her to confront the consequences of her choices and ultimately helped her rediscover her true self. Today, our relationship is stronger than ever. Madison visits regularly, often without Kyle for Mom and me time. She proudly introduces me to her colleagues and friends without hesitation. The Winters have even mellowed somewhat, especially with a grandchild on the way. If you have ever felt betrayed by someone you love deeply, remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold them accountable. Real love is not about being a doormat. It is about caring enough to demand truth and respect. And sometimes, when you stand firm in your own worth, you create the opportunity for genuine reconciliation and growth. Has someone you love ever tried to erase you from their life? How did you handle it? Remember, relationships worth having are built on honesty and mutual respect. Like, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it helps someone facing similar challenges find the courage to stand up for themselves while keeping their heart open to healing.